Syria was originally a large portion of the Ottoman Empire until October 1918. In October of 1918, a combined British and Syrian force, led by T. Lawrence and Amir Fasil, invaded the Ottoman Empire and liberated Syria. Syria was only a small part of Lawrence's campaign, who would later liberate the entire Arabian Peninsula from the Ottoman Empire, effectively ending the empire's reign. In 1920, the League of Nations granted France a mandate over Syria. 5 years later, Syrian freedom fighters began an uprising to overthrow the French. When Nazis took control of France in 1940, Syria indirectly became under Nazi control. After the war, France would completely withdraw all troops.
In 1947, Michael Aflaq and Salah al-Din al-Battar founded the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party. In 1966, a national coup overthrew the Ba'athist cabinet, taking Michael Aflaq and Salah al-Din al-Battar out of power. The Ba'athist Party did eventually return to power, and in 1971 appointed Hafez al-Assad, current President Bashar al-Assad's father, for a 7-year term. Hafez later used his presidency to become dictator of Syria. In 2000, when Hafez died, he was succeeded by Bashar al-Assad, his second son. Bashar al-Assad was not popular among a large portion of his citizens, and especially not popular in the international community. This paved the way for the Arab Spring uprising in 2011.
The party's rise to power eventually paved the way for Assad's rule.
The Assad's ruling is now the current conflict in Syria with the rebellion revolutionary groups, which is now causing the Arab Spring that started in 2011.
Warning, the next images may be graphic. Protests began in early 2011 and would not gain much support until a few months later. One of the most famous early protesters, Hamaz al-Khatib, a 13-year-old boy who had been captured by Syrian forces on January 31, 2011. He had been tortured brutally and unmercifully. His body showed signs of gunshots, whipping, and many other means of torture. His death became a symbol that was used by many Syrian rebels. There was used him as a sign for government brutality, and he became a reason to take arms up against the government.
On March 29, 2011, the Syrian cabinet resigned due to the reform of President Bashar al-Assad. Assad forcibly made them resign, hoping to end corruption in his government. Assad was hoping to satisfy the rebels with his anti-corruption campaign. His campaign did not work, and the rebels soon demanded more reforms.
On November 20, 2011, one of the largest Syrian rebel groups, the Free Syrian Army, launched 2 rocket-propelled grenades at the Ba'ath Party's headquarters. Although little damage was done, it became a symbolic blow against the government, showing that the Syrian rebels were prepared to take action for what they wanted. Until then, the government was convinced that no one would take military action against them. The actions row created the conditions for all-out civil war.
On December 15, 2011, the human rights advocacy group named many of Assad's high-ranking generals and government officials who had committed multiple crimes against humanity. The report shamed and ruined the credibility of many of Assad's officials. Many citizens were outraged at what they had done, and anti-government support grew. On December 16, 2011, Russia offered a tougher draft resolution on Syria to the UN Security Council. This was proposed after 27 Syrians were killed by a rebel group.
Fairly complex document, but clearly the Syrian authorities are singled out in a number of instances, as was the case in August the 3rd presidential statement. We updated that Russian-Chinese draft, and we proposed to the Council a new version which takes into account the developments of the past few months and which considerably strengthens all aspects of the previous text. With regard to the need to stop violence, with regard to the need to uphold human rights, with regard to expediting reforms.
In 2012, Syria was in full-out civil war. During 2013, the Free Syrian Army became the biggest rebel group in all of Syria. By the end of 2013, the Free Syrian Army had assassinated 3 members of Assad's council, captured Aleppo in northern Syria and set off 2 bombs at Syria's military headquarters in Damascus.
Syria lost Turkey as an ally after 2 major events. In June, a Turkish fighter strayed into military airspace and was shot down immediately by Syrian forces. Turkey changed their rules of engagement after this. Any armed forces to come from Syria were considered a military threat. In October, Syria and Turkey became enemies when Syria launched mortar fire over the Turkish border, killing 5 civilians. Their relationship is now tense, and they are both putting all possible restrictions on the other. Most recently, on February 20th, 2013, one of the many factions detonated 2 bombs at the National Soccer Stadium in Damascus. The bombs killed Syria's star soccer player. This is an example of why the international community will not intervene in Syria. The government called this a terrorist attack, while many others called it a revolutionary act. The conflict is not as black and white as the Arab Spring is in many other countries.
Syria's future is up in the air at this point. The country has an enormous amount of factions, including the Ba'ath Party. The rebellion group most likely to take power of Syria is the Free Syrian Army. But even a lone faction has control of Syria, the country will be in political turmoil. There are a wide variety of political groups and views between each faction. Every faction has a nemesis, and all parties will never be fully satisfied with one faction. The only way of ending this peacefully relies on the international community. However, the international community coming to Syria's aid is still not yet within sight. There is no political group that has the overall support of the UN. Most Western countries wish to overthrow Assad's regime and blame him for the civil war. Countries such as China and Russia will prefer to divide up the blame between the two sides instead of putting it all solely on Assad's regime. Even when they do, the only thing that is clear is that the issue will not be decided for a long time. This could mean years more of civil war within Syria.